Today, we will analyze satellite imagery to assess the extent of damage caused by U.S. tunnel-penetrating bombs to Iran's underground nuclear program by 2025, determine how many ballistic missile launchers Iran still possesses, and outline the tactics the U.S. military employed in this large-scale air campaign. The big question whether these bombs can actually smash through deep mountain bunkers carries huge strategic weight, way beyond just Iran. First off, let's talk about the precision of these airstrikes. Satellite images of 12 strike points from GBU, 57 bombs at Iran's Fordow nuclear enrichment facility, reveal a ton of key details. You can see 2 clusters, each with 3 impact craters. Even though only 6 craters are visible, in reality, 12 GBU-57 bombs were dropped because each crater took 2 bombs, kinda like throwing one dart right on top of another, except these darts are GPS guided from a height of about 9 miles up in the sky. The impact craters are lined up in a straight path from north to south. This attack pattern shows that U.S. intelligence has deep knowledge of this underground site. The Washington Post talked to Wes Bryant, a Pentagon satellite imagery expert. He said B-2 bombers targeted a stretch of about 820 feet of the facility, housing uranium enrichment centrifuges, hitting the ventilation shafts with pinpoint accuracy. Iran's Fordow nuclear facility needs these vulnerable ventilation shafts for 2 reasons. 1. To pull in air and get rid of CO2 so people can breathe underground. And 2. To vent the massive heat from the nuclear centrifuge rooms. Otherwise, the heat would fry the equipment, kinda like how a computer with a graphics card needs a bunch of fans to stay cool. These ventilation shafts are just a few feet wide, making them tiny targets that are usually heavily camouflaged. Joseph Rogers from the Center for Strategic and International Studies on Nuclear Issues said the reason for targeting the vents is that they're a direct path to the core components of the underground facility. Satellite imagery shows an explosion pattern with discolored soil stretching out about 656 feet from the bomb craters, suggesting the underground shockwave spread at least that far through the facility. Jerry Lewis from the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies at Middlebury Institute told Wired magazine that they might not be trying to fully penetrate the facility, just get close enough to create a shockwave that wrecks it. A big enough shockwave can kill people, destroy equipment, and damage the structure, even without directly punching through reinforced concrete. Before and after images of the bunker buster strike points show the terrain all torn up with grayish-white and greenish soil, a sign of pressure from collapsing tunnels blowing debris out through the vents and tunnels. When an underground space caves in, the pressure pushes debris outward, sorta like when a window shatters from the outside and glass falls inward. This phenomenon is also noted in a deep sinkhole on the eastern side of the facility. The question of whether these bombs are effective is super critical and will have a profound impact on the future of American power and modern warfare strategy. North Korea and China have poured billions of dollars and years of effort into building deep underground strategies to dodge the kind of bombs only the U.S. can deploy. If the damage at Fordow is severe, it proves that mountain bunkers in North Korea and China aren't immune to U.S. air power, creating a strong deterrent effect. On the flip side, if the bunker busters underperform, say, only 20% effective, it'll dent U.S. military credibility and encourage rival nations to keep developing underground facilities. Only about 50 GBU-57 bombs have been made for the entire U.S. Air Force arsenal, based on public info from production contracts. Jerry Lewis said the U.S. military relies on computer models to calculate the pressure needed to cause serious damage or even collapse a facility. The U.S. doesn't need a bomb to penetrate a full 262 feet to inflict significant harm, since bunker busters are tested against reinforced concrete that can withstand 5,000 pounds per square inch of force, while Iran uses stronger concrete rated up to 15,000 pounds per square inch. To put that in perspective, if you put a 774-pound concrete block on a coin, about 0.39 square inches, the pressure would be around 5,000 pounds per square inch. If a 2,200-pound car stood on that same coin, the pressure at the contact point would be close to 15,000 pounds per square inch. What's not in the images is just as telling. There's no sign of Iranian air defense systems, which were already knocked out by Israeli and US airstrikes. But can we draw conclusions about how effective Russian air defense gear is against American stealth fighters? That's tough to say, since Iran's systems are export versions operated by a different military force. Ukraine has also used Russian-made S-300 air defense systems effectively, so it's hard to make a solid judgment. There's no evidence of large-scale recovery or repair efforts. Some activity on the roads shows vehicles around, suggesting Iranian personnel are on-site assessing the damage. The easiest way to gather open-source intel isn't from satellite images, but from locals on the ground using cell phones and spreading info. Iranians at the site could be communicating with their leadership about the extent of the damage, and those communications might get picked up by US CIA signals or human intelligence and relayed to American officials. When it comes to public statements from governments, it's interesting to see officials lie even with clear satellite imagery as evidence. Still, these statements can offer clues about the airstrike's effectiveness. Iran's energy agency admitted access to the facility has been impacted, while US officials claim Fordow can no longer enrich uranium. But internally, the Pentagon still has doubts about whether the GBU-57 could penetrate to Fordow's main chamber. Iran insists the core facility is intact, but they're not letting international inspectors in to verify, which raises questions about their claims. Hassan Abedini, deputy political director of Iran's state TV, said they evacuated 3 sites beforehand, claiming enriched uranium stockpiles were moved, and there's no material left there that could cause radiation if hit. Iran says they moved all enriched uranium to safety before the US airstrike last weekend. But General Kenneth McKenzie, former head of US Central Command, pointed out that moving radioactive material without being detected is really hard. Some evidence from Israeli officials speaking to the New York Times suggests Iran did move equipment, including uranium, out of the facility earlier. Satellite imagery from Maxar confirms 17 trucks arrived and then left before the strike. From about 248 miles to the south, U.S. submarines launched a big wave of 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles at the Esfahan nuclear facility to destroy the remaining buildings and wipe it out completely. But is there a radiation risk after the attack? Since the U.S. targeted enrichment facilities rather than active reactors or weapon stockpiles, the risk is considered negligible. Operation Nighthammer pulled in huge resources, including 120 U.S. Air Force fighter jets, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare planes, and locals in Iran reported major disruptions to mobile communications, GPS, and other systems in the area. After a series of airstrikes dropping over 500,000 pounds of munitions on Iran, their nuclear program has been set back years at the very least, maybe even totally destroyed. But how many ballistic missile launchers does Iran have left after so many were targeted by Israeli fighters? That's a key factor, since while Iran has about 2,000 ballistic missiles capable of reaching Israel, they only had around 300 mobile launchers known as TELs to fire them, and that number's been cut down a lot. Stats show Israel destroyed at least 54 of Iran's ballistic missile launchers. You might think they've got about 246 left, but keep in mind many of those are decoys or older, smaller ones that can't launch missiles at Israel. This drop explains why Iran's retaliation capacity fell from 150 missiles a day to just about 10 a day. The kill mechanism is pretty wild. When Iran launches a missile, the heat signature gets picked up instantly by US satellites. GPS data is sent to an Israeli fighter jet, and they hunt it down in a high-stakes chase. Iran hasn't completely lost its edge. They're still hitting Israeli cities with drones and ballistic missiles. Over 500 ballistic missiles have been fired at Israel, most intercepted, but about 50 are estimated to have hit the ground. Still, the majority landed in open areas that didn't need defending, and only a few caused major damage. It's not exactly an impressive show of strength. Iran's missile infrastructure has taken a heavy hit. Before the war, Iran could produce about 50 missiles a month to outpace Israel's air defense production, but now things have flipped. It's a war of missile attrition instead of manpower. The question now is who runs out of missiles first, Iran or Israel?